sit. Thank you, thank you.
So if I could see by a show of hands, how many of you do, or at one point in your life did, do a gratitude journal? I didn't research it enough to see where that actual gratitude journal hit our country as something to do, but I have a feeling it might have had something to do with Oprah. Well, the gratitude journal comes from some research. And in 2003, psychologists Robert Emmons and Michael McCullough conducted an experiment on patients who had neuromuscular diseases. That would be something like muscular dystrophy, ALS, myasthenia gravis, something like that. And what they found was that participants who kept a 21-day diary of things for which they're grateful exhibited greater amounts of energy, positive moods, and a heightened sense of being connected to others. As a whole, these participants were more optimistic about the coming week than those in the control group. A similar study done with adolescents produced an even higher level of enthusiasm, determination, and focus from the teens who kept a gratitude journal. And another study done by Emmons, Jeffrey Froh, and William Seefick in 2008 found that children who practice grateful thinking have more positive attitudes towards school and their families. So these studies support the idea that it truly is in our best interest to be grateful, to give thanks with a grateful heart. Now, those of us in the Midwest are often described by those who are not from the Midwest as being extremely polite. When I hear things like that, I reflect on the many times I coached my children and now my grandchildren to say please and thank you, and to excuse themselves when appropriate. We thank our Amazon drivers, our grocery clerks, and others even without even thinking about it. And I know that many of us find it unsettling to ask Alexa to do something for us without saying thank you to her when she complies. Yet despite our Midwestern gratefulness and politeness, all of us, despite our best intentions, still fall prey to complaining. Theo Biscaglia wrote about a woman on a flight from New York to California who complained the whole time, and she complained that her meal was cold and it wasn't what she likes to eat. Never mind the fact that she was 35,000 feet in the air and being served. Yes, it is easy to take our many, many blessings for granted, and harder to express gratitude, especially during the times when life isn't going so well. It's hard to be grateful for the challenges. How different our world will be when we adopt a perspective that sees challenges as a gift, a blessing, as something for which we can be grateful. Now, Kurt is going to speak today about giving thanks to God, even in trying times, especially in trying times. Giving our thanks for all of it, the welcomed and the unwelcomed. You see, without contrast, we have no measurement for personal growth. Just as light needs dark, salt needs sweet, joy needs pain. I'm guessing there is something in all of our pasts that we can look back on and say, yeah, that was an awful time in my life, but I grew so much because of it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of homework, because that's what I do. I want to give you a second to bring an event or person into your mind that caused you extreme pain. Got it? Well, this week I urge you to take some time to look at this one situation or person with a different perspective. Just start with one. On a piece of paper, or several sheets if needed, write down all of the feelings associated with this. Anger, shame, sadness, betrayal, rejection, disappointment. Just write them, get it all out. And when you've emptied yourself of all these feelings onto this paper, write down next to it, underneath it, or on the back, all of the reasons that you're grateful for having gone through that or having been with that person. When you're finished with the exercise, you can throw the paper away, burn it, shred it, bury it, anything that brings closure for you. The important thing is to be able to begin to sift through the messiness of your life to find gratitude. When you get to gratitude, even in the midst of darkness and pain, that's when true healing can begin. And often, forgiveness follows closely behind. Remember, we are all just walking each other home. Let's try to find gratitude for the roadblocks along the way. Welcome to worship. We are so glad you're here. And reading our scripture this morning is Nancy Johnson. Nancy?
Oh, yeah. All right, so we're tag teaming on something not in the bulletin. I forgot to put it in the bulletin, but we're going to do Psalm 30 responsively. And so Nancy will do the light print, and she is the right side, the south side, and I will be leading the bold side, the darker side print over here. And so, Nancy.
All righty. A good snowy morning. So I'll begin with, I will extol you, O Lord, for you have lifted me up and did not let my foes rejoice over me.
All right, we'll start that again. You guys are supposed to join in with her while she reads the light print. Okay, try that again.
Okay, ready? I will extol you, O Lord, for you have lifted me up and did not let my foes rejoice over me.
O Lord, my God, I cried to you for help, and you healed me.
O Lord, you brought up my soul from Sheol.
Restored me to life from among those gone down to the pit.
Sing praises to the Lord, O his faithful ones, and give thanks to his holy name.
Surely the Lord's anger is but for a moment. The Lord's favor is for a lifetime.
Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes with the morning.
As for me, I said in my prosperity, I shall never be moved.
By your favor, O Lord, you had established me as a strong mountain.
You hide your face, I was dismayed.
To you, O Lord, I cried, and to the Lord I made supplication.
What profit is there in my death if I go down to the pit?
Will the dust praise you? Will it tell of your faithfulness?
Hear, O Lord, and be gracious to me. O Lord, be my helper.
You have turned my mourning into dancing. You have lost my sackcloth and girded me with gladness, that my soul may praise you and not be silent.
O Lord, my God, I will give thanks to you forever.
Our reading this morning is, well, you'll have to look in your bulletin because I don't have that written down. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him, keeping their distance. They called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well."
Great. Thank you, Nancy. Very good, very good. I don't know what that says about me, Gina, but I didn't have any, I was pretty quick thinking of a person who had bothered me or offended me. I don't know if that speaks well of my memory or to the depth of the hurt. But previous to that, you'd said something that triggered me. There was a gentleman, his name's Bill, and he was a parishioner and friend. We did a little bit of travel together at Hinsdale Church. And when Bill had this, he had a convertible Mercedes. It was an older one. He was a doctor. And when he would go through, some of us remember when you could throw the coins into on the tollway. Well, he would throw the coins into the box, and then he would just shout out, "Thank you, Mabel!" He'd just drive on through. I mean, there was no Mabel around. He was just like interacting with the machine. So he was quite the character, to say the least, and had wonderful times together with him. It was a good and joyful thing. Good and joyful thing. So if you were to say those words, "Hey, that was good. That made me happy," what might you be referring to, speaking about? What's good? What brings you joy? Now there's plenty for me, things that lift my spirit. And it's no exaggeration that somewhere along the way, I just regularly give thanks that I can walk across the kitchen and turn on a faucet and something comes out. You know, and something that we take for granted. I mean, that's something that just has a hold of me. And maybe it's because I've traveled to other parts of the world where, you know, there's still people who are walking a long ways to get it. They don't have pure water. They have all sorts of things. But I'm thankful for something that simple. I'm thankful that I have a blanket to sleep under at night. Now, this is going to be hard for some of us, but are any of you Naked and Afraid fans? I know this is one of those things where you're like, "Ooh, boy, I can't admit that." Come on now, it's okay. Am I the only one here? All right, so if you're worried about being the naked part, don't worry about that because they don't show anything, okay? I am just fascinated by their ability to overcome the elements. I mean, it is insane what some of these people do, and I guess because I've done some long distance events, I'm just in awe. Because a lot of people go, "Well, how can you do what you do?" I look at them and go, "How can they do?" But they don't have a blanket, among other things, and sometimes it was snowing out, and they're like freezing through the night. I'm thankful that I can stop and get a cup of coffee and not have to worry about Betsy getting mad at me. Because we can afford it. I can go to Dunkin' Donuts, and so I'm thankful for that. I'm really thankful that tonight it's going to stay light until 7 o'clock, and I'm all in on that. I'm thankful for those who give blood, because those of you who give blood, you know, for some people, part of that is taken out, and then it's given to me as therapy because I've got this lung thing that my parents gifted me with. Other than great health, I got this lung thing, and the only thing that can be done is for people to give blood, and then that little protein is taken out and given to me. So I just am so thankful for those people who sit down and stick out their arm. I'm thankful that this week I'll be watching both the grandsons, but the older grandson playing in the National U18, under 18, Sweet 16 National Finals for basketball. I'm thankful just how many of us are gathering together in the fellowship time, that we're having to think about, well, how might we enlarge that space? How might we make room for others as well? But there's no shortage of sadness nipping at my heels either, and perhaps yours. Betsy and I are just heartbroken. Neighbors that we had for 8-9 years, if not longer, down at Wheaton. Neighbors. I performed celebrated her parents' wedding anniversary, or wedding. Died yesterday, 20 years old. Rare ovarian cancer. We are just heartbroken and can't imagine, and we're just sick, at the grief of her parents and grandparents who Betsy has stayed in contact with these many years. The injustice of our justice system saddens me. And it saddens me that a very vocal part of the church is once again behind and supporting the oppression of a minority. The church wasn't just complicit in the oppression of blacks down through history. It often was leading the banner. And now it's very vocal, if not leading the way, with the LGBTQ community. And that wasn't enough, so now they've really focused in on the trans community. And it is the church, very vocal part of the church, that's behind that, and it saddens me greatly. And I could go on. Zach Williams sings a song. It's called The Old Church Choir. I don't know how the title of the song comes up from, but part of the words are, he says, I got a sweet salvation and it's beautiful. I got a heart overflowing because I've been restored. There ain't nothing gonna steal my joy. You may have heard it. Really? Can we experience joy no matter what the circumstances around us? So as we celebrated communion last week, I proclaimed it's a good and joyful thing as we stand with the table set before us for bread and wine, for us grape juice. Those represent outward and visible signs of grace from a source that never runs dry. So the words that immediately followed then that invitation were, lift up your hearts, I said, and to that you would respond, we lift them up to the Lord. And then I proclaim, it is a right and good and joyful thing always and everywhere to give thanks to Almighty God, creator of heaven and earth. It's a good and joyful thing to give thanks to God always and everywhere, always and everywhere. Maybe we should tweak the liturgy just a bit for times like this, say something along the lines of, well, it's a good and joyful thing to give thanks when life feels certain. When we're no longer being told, well, yeah, the recession's still coming, just hold on, it'll get here. Or when we no longer have to fear COVID. When we get to live our lives at least with the illusion of having control. Can we give thanks and praise when there are so many systems, be they economic or educational, health, international, that appear to be hanging on by a thread? And yes, we're getting to prayer here. See, we began a couple of weeks ago with the Lord's Prayer, and it was Jesus' invitation. When you pray like this. And so I offered then, let's see that as an invitation to spend time in silence, to embrace prayer as listening, even more so than speaking. An invitation to sit and attend to what the scriptures refer to as the still small voice of God. Then last week we talked about the Psalms, the hymnal for the Hebrew people, their prayer book. Oh, the height and breadth of those prayers. I hope that you feel the yin and the yang, and some of the like, oh my gosh, is that person really talking to God as we read the 30th Psalm, because they went through the whole range of emotions. Because there are many times when the emotions, whether it be anger or we're feeling upset, that many have felt like, oh, I need to keep that separate from God. I'm just supposed to be, everything's hunky-dory when I actually talk with God. And what the Psalms say to us is au contraire. The Psalms basically say, bring it on. Whatever the emotion is, I'm here. I'm at the ready. Let it rip. Let it fly. And then Walter Brueggemann told us that we can divide the Psalms basically into three categories, whether you've got orientation, which is as we're orienting ourselves towards God, or disorientation when life has just gone flat and disarray, and then reorientation when we find ourselves having come out of that disorientation. So it was a reminder, or maybe for some of us a first time, that God is powerfully present not only when things are going well, but, and maybe especially, when life is being tossed around like a leaf in the midst of a gale force wind. When we find ourselves jumping up and down 1 minute and pulling our hair out the next. So last week Gina said, well, I did some further reflection on the Lord's Prayer, and she revisited that, and I continue to reflect on my own words from last Sunday in the Psalms, and as I reflected on the Psalms, the one thing that jumped out at me, and bear with me, and I would ask you to think in your times of prayer, whether it's mighty prayer or whether it's just, you don't find yourself doing it very often. I think it's, for most of us, it's a prayer about out there. It's a prayer for our aunt or our uncle or our surgery or this friend or that cause out in the world, all of which are good. But it dawned on me how the Psalms, for the vast, vast majority, are about, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm struggling with. This is where I'm joyous, oh Lord. It reminded me of the old spiritual, it's me. It's me, O Lord. Psalm 61 says, hear my cry, O Lord. Listen to my prayer. From the end of the earth I call out to you when my heart is faint. So I don't know if anyone here hasn't felt overwhelmed or disheartened a bit this past week. In the Psalms, we find seasons of disorientation affirmed. See, some need permission to pray those words that come out of hurt, anger, fear, frustration, words that cause tears and pain in our lives. But in the same breath, we don't want to stay there. we don't want to grow comfortable in our confusion or in our fear. That's not embracing the fullness of life offered to us by Jesus, and for sure we will lose our way if we just consume a steady diet of fear and uncertainty. And we need more than just the assurance that comes with being fully vaccinated or knowing that we'll receive a monthly check from some source or having enough toilet paper to last from now until Christmas. See, what we long for, the way our lives have been created, shaped, is for the presence of the one who hears us, no matter what season of life, what time of the day, whether we're in isolation or in community, high tide or low tide, in season, out of season, the one who knows our needs before we ask, the one who doesn't always heal our bodies in the way we want, but who stands ready to make us well. A wholeness, not to be confused with physical healing. So in our text today, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. When he enters a village, he's greeted by a parade. No. He's greeted by 10 lepers. People who knew the impact of social distancing long before it ever entered our lexicon. They were all too familiar with the pain of being contagious, ostracized, living in isolation. People would look at them with suspicion, and they would be moved. They would get out of the way from a group or an individual who's a leper faster than people in Chicago will walk around a homeless person laying on the sidewalk. And if there were any who heard this commotion caused by Jesus beginning to have an interaction with the 10, they might have yelled out from their window, "You go back to where you belong," which was quarantined. You don't even belong out here. But Jesus, he knew them. He knew their plight. He hears their plea. And he tells them to go to a priest. You see, it was the priest and the priest alone who could pronounce them cured. It was the priest alone who could say, "You are given permission to come back into society." So it's rather crazy to me, but they're all in for the sit down. I've been watching The Sopranos lately, so they're all in for the conversation, with the priest. And so they go. And the one who's exiled them, they now have to go have a conversation about his permission to return back to society. So as they go, they're made clean. They were healed. What happened? They followed Jesus' directions. Jesus said, "Do this." They did it. Life got better. They followed Jesus' direction, and they were cured. I don't know what that looked like. Did their scabs fall off? Did their wounds begin to close? Did the red spots vanish? I don't know. Minor points to me. What strikes me is that Jesus saw the marginalization. He saw their separation. And he said, "Not on my watch." See, Jesus is about bringing people together. Again, something that this church and other churches believe, that we need to wave that banner high, because again, there's a strong current in the church that is for separation and alienation and fear, and Jesus is so unlike that. So one leper, a Samaritan. You got to love Luke's theme, man. Luke is all over people who are ostracized by society. Women, he's all for women. Remember, the Samaritans are the outcasts of society. So it's a Samaritan who fully appreciates what's just happened. He knows he had nothing to do with it. He did not deserve it. Only thing he did was to ask for it. So he returns to the one who has changed his life in an instant. He humbles himself, which I suspect humility would have been something that kind of got beaten into him in his months or years of being exiled. He plops himself at Jesus' feet. And then he hears sweet Jesus say, "Your faith has made you well." See, I think what's being said is his faith in Jesus healed him physically, and his thanksgiving made him whole. Now, it's interesting and a little bit deep in the woods, but I think this is an echo of 2 chapters before. In Luke chapter 15, we hear some familiar stories to some of us. It was the story of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son. Stories in which we see the joy of God finding us. God is like a shepherd who'll leave the 99 behind and go find the one that's missing. God is like a woman who gets down on her hands and knees and she searches the house until she finally finds that missing coin. And God is like a father who stands waiting, looking over his vast expanse, waiting for that prodigal son who has wasted away his life in riotous livings. And he's waiting to see that son, not to punish him, but to welcome him back and give him a party. So do we know what it means to be lost and found, dead and now alive? See, we can only understand being found if we have some appreciation to the fact that we were lost. And if and when we do, then we begin to appreciate how much God cares for us. Do you know that while you can't escape the reality of COVID or the myriad of other things that are always going to be pressing in on us, we can always visualize, we can always see ourselves in the loving, caring presence of God. So see, what I need more than a cupboard full of food or the assurance of things to come is Jesus. Because there are so many transitory things that are going to be here today, gone tomorrow. So what I need for the long haul is, as the leper did, was to come back to Jesus and be made whole. So what do I mean by that? The difference between the leprous man having his disease taken away. Now hear me, that was wonderful. But it's coming to Jesus brought him that sense of peace that passes all understanding. A knowledge that while we don't know what the future holds, we know the one who holds the future. Perhaps you've heard that. A presence that is with me today, tomorrow, and throughout eternity. So there may never be a medical cure for what ails me or ails us in body. There is much to life that I or we will never control. But again, I or we can put our faith in the one who longs to make us whole if we will but come to him. And like those alienated, those disenfranchised, those marginalized, those ostracized, we can trust that Jesus stands ready to hear our cries. If we follow his instructions, his way of living, we will find life. He says, life abundantly. Come unto me, all you who are heavy laden, I will give you rest. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And what I want to get better at, and maybe you will too, is that I want to get better at stopping. Yeah, stopping. Because it's easy to keep going. But what I want to get better at is stopping, and I am inch by inch, foot by foot, yard by yard, because we live in such a production-oriented society. I'm trying to find myself just being more, which allows space for that still small voice. And in my stopping, I give myself the opportunity to hear that voice. The voice I long to hear, as a sheep longs to hear the voice of a shepherd, or as the psalmist says, the deer longs for the panting water. This, dear friends, is the essence of prayer. So your bulletin cover says, be the one. See, there's only one who took the time to go back to the one who had healed him and would make him whole. How do we get there? We get there by prayer. We get there by silence. We get there by opening up our lives and realizing that all of our life, the good, the bad, the in-season, the out-of-season, the ups, the downs, that they're all good with God, that we can bring to God the fullness of who we are, so that God can bring to us the fullness of who God is. So let's be in silence just for a moment. Perhaps you want to think about that assignment or that opportunity that Gina gave to you, or think about how you could take your foot off the gas a little bit. O Lord, as the psalmist says, in solitude and silence, may I hear your voice, O Lord. Amen. All right, Gina, lead us on.
So we've come to the part of our worship service where we lift up joys and also challenges or things that we want to have prayer for. If you have anything, and you can write it down on this yellow sheet, and if you're watching from home and you have something you would like us to add, please give it to the AV desk, and we will take it from there. You know, one thing I want to say about these cards, I read pretty much exactly what you write. And if there's ever anything that, I just kind of want you to realize that right now we are very in this enclosed space, and it's a very sacred space, and it's just us. But this does go out over the airwaves later on in the day or in the week. So as you're putting together what it is that you want to say, keep that in mind as well, so that we can lift your prayers and share them, but also not give too much information to social media and the world. So, with that, Nancy Johnson is lifting their son-in-law's mother, Penny Henry. She passed away this past week, so she's asking for prayers for her, for Nancy's sister-in-law, Aaron, and family. Rob Shirley wants to announce that Colleen is celebrating her birthday today, and he adds, she's holding up well. And she's probably grateful you didn't say what number it is, Rob. All right. Please lift up Lisa Haig as she recovers from this week's hip surgery. May she return to us soon. And Sarah Narango is lifting up her family as they grieve the loss of her nephew, and that loss was caused by suicide. So, Sarah, we lift your nephew. And Nancy Johnson is also lifting her sister Diane, who's having radiation on a brain tumor this week. And Nancy wants to announce that Dan is having a birthday tomorrow. Is he holding up pretty well too? Good to know.
Hey, Rodney.
All right. Anything else from the AV desk? Bonnie? Thank you. Okay. Betsy is lifting prayers for the Dittman family who lost their granddaughter, Robin, who was 20 and died of a rare ovarian cancer. A friend, Mary, with multiple strokes. She's lifting up their grandson as well, who's playing in the Sweet 16. Betsy is lifting the world, Israel, and people in California. Lifting up Jason Martinez, family, for the loss of their father and husband. Bonnie's friend Marcella, dealing with the return of cancer. And I would also add that Bonnie lost a friend and attended a funeral yesterday. So prayers for that family as well. Blessings for 2 Woodstock ladies who came to help with our PADS meal last Sunday. Next weekend is the City of McHenry's Dyeing the River Green. So it begins at Shamrock the Fox celebration. And I believe, is there a request in the bulletin already, but a request that we wear green next Sunday? So in honor of St. Patrick's Day and the McHenry dyeing the fox green, wear green next week. So, Pastor, are there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I had a fun moment go through my head. So my mom, when she was a big Jack Nicklaus fan, and so when it would come down like the 18th hole or whatever, and we decided to buy a putt or something, I'd look over and man, she was praying, and I said, Mom, what you doing? She said, well, I'm praying that he'll make that putt. I said, well, Arnie's Army's over there and praying that he'll miss that putt. God's in a tough place. I mean, who's praying more, for Arnie or for Jack Nicklaus? Some of you don't even know those names. But the funny moment was that this U18 basketball national championship, they're all Christian home schools. So there's going to be a lot of praying going on. So God's going to have a lot of ciphering to do with that. But yeah, we're really excited about that. Well, so on the serious note, I would point out that something that's kind of flying beneath the radar is there have been tens of thousands of people marching in the streets in Israel. And it has to do with Benjamin Netanyahu's coming back into power. He's been under investigation now for like 5 years, I think. And he is trying to curtail the power of the courts over there. Makes sense if you're under indictment that you would try to do that. And so there are tens of thousands of saying, that they're worried about the power of the court being taken away, because in Israel, the courts are a leading voice for equality and for justice. Kind of a different issue that we're dealing with here in the States, which is what we see as that the courts are more the voice of the past and of the status quo, and we have a bunch of lawyers or jurists who are saying that it's they're originalists, which would mean sorry women, you can't vote, blacks, you're only 2/3 of a person. So 2 countries, each dealing with issues about the importance of the court and coming at it from very different angles. But it's interesting to note there are tens of thousands of people in the streets saying, no, we object to this government overreach that's being proffered by the government. So, as Betsy mentioned, want to keep the state of Israel in our prayers. So that. Oh, and Craig and Denise, we would mention, are both at home. They got COVID, and so we want to pray for their quick recovery. All right, our prayer song this morning, I think it might be new, but it's a pretty simple tune, and so we will invite you to move into it as you feel comfortable. It's All I Need Is You. The words will be on the screen, and following that, we'll pray.
Face life. This is not an easy journey that we are on. It has pitfalls. It has joy. It has concern. It has light. It has dark. But in all of it, it has you. Lord, you've heard prayers lifted for those whom we love. Heard our concerns, our fears, our pleas. Pleas for healing, comfort, discernment. We travel through this life, Lord, with you as the constant by our side. For that we are grateful. We give thanks to you, Lord, for so many things. But we are especially grateful for sending Jesus to show us the way. And let us now pray together the prayer that he taught by saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And now for a few words about our giving, we welcome Arnie. Arnie, welcome to
Good morning, everyone. Yes. We will now ask for continued support for God's work through our offering. The offering words are from Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 17. Each of you must bring a gift in proportion to the way the Lord your God has blessed you. With continued prayers and gifts of hope and love, our church is being blessed each week. We are guided to use these gifts wisely for the growth and mission of our church. For those worshiping here today, you may place your offering in the plate at the back of the sanctuary. For those watching remote, you can send it in to 3717 Main Street, or you can contribute on the church website, McHenry.FUMC.org, or you can use the QR code on the back of the bulletin. Your consistent giving to the church is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
All right, Arnie, thank you. All right, well, sometimes we like to make it easy, and so Brian was pointing out, he said, did you realize that the tune for the first song and the last song is the same? I'm like, no, you're asking me to walk and chew gum at the same time. But it ended up making it really easy for us. And so if you enjoyed the tune for the first song, you're going to really enjoy the tune for this song because it's the same tune. So in case you thought you were in a time warp or something, that's what it is. So I invite you to stand, different words, same great tune, and stand as you're able and sing as you are inclined. Phrase of that fourth verse, save us from weak resignation. May that be our prayer as we go by, because it's easy sometimes just to walk around some of those issues that really need addressing. And if, as Jesus said, if you don't speak out, the very rocks themselves shall cry out. And so let us be a people who do not give in, but who continue to be a voice, as Jesus was, for those who are marginalized, those who are on the outside, those who are the outcasts of society. May we be those who welcome and bring into the fold and let them know not only of our love, but the creator love and the creating love of Almighty God. As we go forth in that name which is above every other name, the sweet name of Jesus. Go in peace.